We've got flags and banners, and if you mind your manners, we might even get to standards and what they represent. So just take my voice's hand and we'll both try to understand how this VexHead Logic podcast could be flagged for content. Flagged for content.
What's up, VexHeads, and welcome to episode 53 of Flagged for Content. It's the only podcast that introduced two of its episodes as episode 51. Sorry about that confusion. Anyway, it's also a Flags for Good podcast, and Michael and his crew have some very cool stuff going on over there. So go pick up a flag or two, and when you do, use code FLAGGED4, like the number, content at checkout for a sweet little discount. There's not a whole lot I wanted to go over before we get into this one, so I'll try and keep it short, but you know how I am. I did want to direct everyone over to our link tree, which is just the easiest place to find anything and everything about Flagged for Content, and then some. There's even some of my older stuff on there, believe it or not. And at the top, very top, I think there is a guest request form, which I know I've had two guests that have already been on come on the show via that method, and one who will be on not too long from now that also used that method to get in touch with me. So you can get in touch with me any which way you like, but if you're interested in guesting, that is a cool little way to let me know. Let's see. Oh yeah, a big shout out is in order for VexHead Evan Dunker, who is at EvanD823 on Instagram, for giving me this fantastic Nebraska flag. Nebraska? There's something there, maybe. Anyway, it's in the background here for the viewers. It's also in the background, I think, in the same position. Yeah, in the same spot for the episode as a whole. So, yeah, Evan is an amazing VexHead among amazing VexHeads. Really, really been supportive of me and the show, and another very big Fresh Flags player, like I mentioned, Luke is as well, the guest. They're probably pretty close in points, actually, now I think about it. But anyway, he sent me this about a year ago, and I have yet to use it in a video. I guess I hadn't done anything Nebraska-ish. But anyway, thank you so much, Evan. This flag and the other flag that you sent me really brightened my mood last year after my surgery, and I have not properly thanked you for that. So, Evan, sincerely, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Thanks. With that, let's go ahead and get into the episode. I do want to apologize a teensy bit, not for going long here, although that too, but because Luke and I ran into a little bit of a recording delay during some of the screen share parts. But we did our best to keep it minimal. We actually came out of the recording and back in a few times, which helps stack it a little bit better. But anyway, if we say the same thing at the same time, it is because of that. It's not because of the psychic technology that I'm working on, which actually won't even be complete until a later time that I can't yet determine, which is frustrating. Anyway, Luke was a fantastic guest. He has done redesigns of all the U.S. states and territories in his own way, where they're both distinct and related. It's very cool. Check it out, and check it out in the show notes. He's also done some city flags that stay off their state flags. But anyway, I've gone long as usual, so let's just go ahead and let Luke talk about this stuff instead of hearing me ramble about it, and dive on into episode 53. Folks, you're not going to believe it. We have yet another incredible guest this week. You know him as the winner of Flag Sessions and Then There Was Wales competition with his Christmas jumper flag. You know him from numerous other flag competitions on Reddit, Discord, Instagram, you get it. And you know him as the bartender who is way too excited to talk to his patrons about flags. It's Luke Schroer!
Hello, hello.
Hello. What's up, Luke?
Oh, just another beautiful day here in Omaha, Nebraska. Excited to talk about flags.
Excited to talk about flags, but first let's I know what our listeners come here for, and it's talk about Omaha, Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
So are you from Omaha originally?
No, I grew up on a Hereford cattle ranch in rural Nebraska, but I've always been a Nebraskan, even though work might have pulled me to a couple other states. So Nebraska at heart, currently Omaha. So
Right on. I've never been to Nebraska. Isn't like Omaha? Isn't that where like Saddle Creek Records and like Connor Oberst and all the like Bright
ooh,
Eyes and all that? I don't know how old you are, but
yeah, that's not in my
gotcha.
immediate knowledge, but you could be. We're known for our zoo from a lot of people. We usually compete with San Diego, I believe, for the
Oh,
top
really?
spot nationally. Beautiful zoo. If you ever come, schedule yourself a day to go to the zoo. So
I would, yeah, I would. I've never been to Nebraska. I've never really been like I've been to Memphis is pretty much the furthest west before like just flying to Colorado or LA or Vegas one time for
yeah,
some reason. But yeah, no, I would love to come sometime. And as we mentioned up top, you are a bartender as well in
correct.
Omaha,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep. I used to travel around doing industrial electrical work, and the pandemic changed everybody's lives. And for me, that was, you know what? I'm going to stay in my home state a little bit closer to home, and took up
Yeah,
bartending. So
yeah,
slinging
that's a
drinks.
pretty different. Yeah, I mean, like one's very much more obviously customer facing and everything.
Yeah.
Like, do you like? I don't know. Which one do you like better? Just
I
curious.
like them for different reasons.
Gotcha.
Obviously, electrician pays really well.
Right.
But
Sure.
the work-life balance for me, it's important for me to be able to go city council and give my 2 cents, or drive down to Lincoln and speak on different legislative bills. And when I was an electrician, I just had no time for that with
Yeah.
job site hours. So
Yeah. Do you
city
find you
limits.
again, as we mentioned in the intro, it seems like you probably have a bit more time, if not just opportunity, to talk to patrons about flags than you would probably in an electrician gig.
Correct. Not that I probably couldn't work that in to electrical, but
Right. And I'm sure
we
you
do
did.
trivia on Mondays, and the flag categories come up, and everybody groans
Ooh.
if that happens. Like during Pride Month, we go through a lot of the flags, and they're like, "Oh, here we go. Luke's gonna rack up the points here." But
Right.
what are you gonna do? Sometimes the category's yours, and sometimes it's not. So,
Oh, totally. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of bar trivia, but like they let the bar play like where you're at.
what's that?
Do they let like the bartenders play and like the staff play and everything where you're
Yeah,
at? Or
yeah.
that's
Monday
awesome.
nights in Omaha are a little bit sleepy, so we definitely get
Yeah,
to
yeah.
participate.
Yeah, it's a bit different than most of the ones I go to. Yeah, I think we're going to another one in here in a week where last time we won, so we'll be defending champs. They only do it like
Nice.
monthly, but no flag questions, weirdly. Anyway,
Hmm.
speaking of flag questions, we have plenty to get into. But first, here's what's on the flagpole today for you crazy Vex heads. We have our usual underrated and overrated flags. We are going to start pretty macro with some US state flag redesigns, a lot of which have regional similarities. And then we are going to drill down on some city flags that take inspiration from their state flags. But first, before we get into any of that, Luke, as you know, I like to ask my guests, what's the flag that got you into flags?
That would be the Lincoln flag, which I think is in frame over here. The redesign. Yeah, you've got it on the wall too.
Yeah,
Um, I was like, oh yeah, it's your frame.
right.
But it was not a great flag, and wasn't totally on my radar. I know I did a lot of learning of vexillology over pandemic when we all had a lot of free time. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna submit a design, and I thought I checked off a lot of boxes, but I personally loved the one that won, and I was able to be there for the official first flag raising, and I got to meet Ed Mejia was the designer, and he's just a beautiful person. So I'm glad
Gotcha.
his flag made it as far as it did. That was the one that I liked out of the top four. So,
Yeah.
um, and then the
Yeah.
rest is just flags from there on out.
When was that one, 2020 or 21?
I believe it was, the competition was 2020, but it was officially first raised in 21, if I recall
Gotcha.
properly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So official adoption year would probably be 21, but
Right. I think like that was, well, it was definitely, so I started this show in 2022 and, you know, had been interested in flags like lifelong before that, but not as like keyed in on, you know, city flag changes and state flag. Well, I would have still known the state ones, but not as keyed in on city flag changes, at least not places that, you know, I've never been to and everything. But so I kind of missed the Lincoln flag redesign process. But as a fan of like Art Deco, I can say I do really like this flag.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Nebraska's surprising. It's one of those states, like when we were building a lot of our infrastructure, Art Deco kind of had a good influence. I know that can be said for a lot of cities, but when I look around, I'm here in Omaha, I'm really close to a beautiful old Art Deco train station. So I think he did a fantastic job of keying into something that's not totally represented in a lot of flags. I can't really name another Art Deco-ish flag. So
No.
it's just nice that it can stand alone. It still has our blue and gold colors that are on our state flag.
Yeah.
It's great design overall. I was a fan for sure.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan as well. I know that like some people are going to get in the comments about like because I am not a huge fan to say the least about the new Minnesota flag, and some people are going to get after me about liking a flag that has 2 blues on it. Although I will say the same thing as I say when people are like, well, the Syracuse flag has 2 blues. I'm like, yeah, but they don't touch. It's like the same on this, is like they're fimbriated, right? So
yeah,
to me that makes it less of an issue. And I am always a sucker as like the flag for content like logo has a hidden FFC in it. I like the like L in this one as well for Lincoln. So yeah, big fan of all that. I think like the only note I would have is if the lines could be a little thicker, or if some of them could be anyway. But yeah, that small note.
I appreciate the fact, like, even when the Lincoln flag is limp, you can kind of tell the unique color palette and the thin gold stripes in there.
Yeah.
It's still recognizable. So I do appreciate it for that. That I personally don't confuse it, but I don't know of a lot of flags that look similar, and I think that's a win in of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I disagree with you on Minnesota personally. I enjoy it, and I think that it is basic enough that, as we'll get into probably later, cities can adopt that. What are they going to call it? The Minnesota. I don't know. They had a term for that inverted chevron. So I think that's a beautiful design element that
monstrosity. Minnestrosity. Something. Anyway, but no, yeah. I mean, there's not nothing to that. Like, as you said, like, you know, slight preview. We are going to go into some ones that take cues from their big siblings, as it were, I guess. But yeah, I definitely get the Lincoln one being the one, especially like you said, timeline wise, getting into flags around the same time as that was going through and everything, and local or somewhat local. Yeah, totally. Anything more on the Lincoln one, or do you want to get into these underrated and overrateds?
I think we'll move along the flagpole here.
All right. So which one you want first, under or over?
Let's see. Let's start with underrated.
Okay.
And when I was picking my underrated, I was trying to think city level and kind of local. So I ended up choosing Des Moines. And it was a close competition between Des Moines and Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Yes.
Right here.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a Christmas present, I believe, from the boyfriends.
Nice.
Yeah. I think both of them do a really good job of representing the city. And again, just like Omaha might be a little bit overlooked by a lot of the country, Sioux Falls did a beautiful job. If you've ever been, there's that cascading effect and the multiple lines. It really, really does feel very pertinent to that city. And then Des Moines is a city full of bridges, especially through their downtown. So those little bridge emblems.
Yeah. I was going to say, like briefly describe the Des Moines one to like those who are just listeners.
I believe it's three bridges, or they're white bridges on a blue background, and it has that red angle, which I come to find out that I really like those angles, those diagonal
Yeah,
lines.
another preview, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, another preview. We're just leaving that little breadcrumbs there.
Right.
But I've been to
Yeah,
Des
and it's
Moines
got
several
like the
times.
bridges are like those kind of like circular arches, and they kind of like
Yeah.
move toward the fly at that angle that you're talking, like that kind of diagonal.
Yep.
It's interesting.
And
It's
I've
interesting.
seen pride versions of the flag. It's very remixable for a lot of different things. The Des Moines specifically, I think it's successful. Whoever's listening or watching and wants to do a tour of the Midwest, you've got some interesting flags, and write in the comments if I'm correct or not, I guess, right? But I think, me personally, just being in both of those cities multiple times, I think they do a great job of conveying what I think they need to convey. So, and
Yeah.
Des Moines specifically, you'll see the stickers on the back of a car window of their flag a lot. So they've got pride of it over there. So,
Oh, that's cool. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that is like, at the end of the day, again, I can hate on the Minnesota one all night or all day long. Well, all day and all night long. But at the end of the day, if Minnesotans like enthusiastically adopt it and are excited to fly it, then like I'm just some asshole who's got an opinion, like,
yeah.
which I am anyway, which
We
is
all do.
already the case. But yeah.
We all do.
But I will say, as a Des Moines is it. I don't know if it's one of my favorites necessarily, but I do like it. I don't know. I think I'd give it like a B, probably, in my book. I don't know, something about like the diagonal, which you can win me back on, but
I'll do my best.
It's similar and different, I think, to the Sioux Falls one. They both have kind of like a weird like diagonal, like little bit of like a trippy effect, like that kind of skews toward the fly. Although I guess like Sioux Falls has like another element in that sun, whereas Des Moines kind of just has like the geometric shape. But yeah, for those who remember the episode with Alex, it was episode 49. Sioux Falls was my underrated. So Luke and I are fairly very like-minded on that one anyway, and pretty like-minded on Des Moines, I think, too.
Yeah.
Speaking of like-minded, I already know what your next one is, but do you want to go into your overrated?
Yeah, my overrated would be Pocatello. And I think for me, it's got to be the rule of tincture. It's the blue and red together. And that's the only reason I was just like, obviously it's better than their old one, but I think the reason or the big swing from really bad to good makes people overrate that one. Where me personally, it needs a little fimbriation or something.
That's a good point that I didn't make when I was, because as again in episode 49, my overrated was also Pocatello. But yeah, like that's a good point that I didn't bring up during that one, is it's the amount of swing from bad to good is definitely part of.
I think as time goes on, people will probably rank it a little bit more appropriately. But when you're at the bottom and you go to the top, you got to have a few years of fame, right? I think time will even that one out, but who knows? I could be wrong. That's my one opinion. So
no, I mean, yeah, we'll see. Like with it's not only the swing from so bad to so good, but there's also like an increasing rate of cities getting better flags. So I think like it's both. It's like that, and it's going to get kind of lost in the fray, as you pretty much said too. But yeah, it's for me. It's not just the blue and the red, but it's also the white and the yellow or gold, like at the top of the mountain too. That is a really cool element. The star that goes into like snow-capped peaks.
Yes.
I don't hate the ideas behind it. I'm just not in love with the execution, I guess.
Yeah, because I think if people know their color theories and like using and choosing colors, yellows and golds or white really don't contrast well, and then the blues and reds don't really mesh well. So they chose all the wrong things to put next to each other. So
Yeah.
if you
And-
purely want to look at it that way, like
Right. And that's where I'm going to come across as a hypocrite, because the flag and logo of the show have a red flame on a blue background. I will defend the yellow mic in the middle of that, but yeah, the red on blue is, it is what it is. I
and
think
that
they're
being
different
said,
enough.
I don't hate it either. So
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, totally.
I actually do like the flag.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like you said, it's obviously much, much better than the old one. So
100%.
all right, so that was the one that got you into it, the underrated and the overrated. Let's take a quick break before we get into the kind of bulk of the episode here, where we've got some redesigned U.S. state flags. We'll be right back. And we are back, more with Luke Schroer here. And as the viewers can tell, things are already a little bit different in here. Luke, you have done redesigns of the 50 U.S. states and 5 territories. I guess I'm wondering, before we drill down, let's start at the biggest level here. What kind of got you into this project in the first place?
Yeah, I think it was about 2020. Like I said earlier, I kind of got interested in redesigning, especially with that Lincoln flag. So to really kind of hone in on how to design and what looks good and color treatments, I thought, what better place than 55 prompts, right? All the 50 states and territories. And just kind of dive into like, okay, what does it go into, like researching and and things like that. And I like different flags like Liberia and the Union Jack to a degree, that they kind of have an element that brings them all together and makes them relatable with each other. So you can kind of see collective. So it was a little bit of a United States type project for me as well. So I really didn't start anywhere specific. I think Nebraska was one of my first states. And I just kept knocking them off randomly. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of see what the different states used for their symbolism. So I would encourage anybody else that wants to get into design, maybe start with a project like this, or pick out something with lots of different examples or prompts. And you can really kind of hone and start to figure out what your style is.
Yeah. And I guess like start with one that maybe not necessarily, but like you started with Nebraska for a reason. It's because like it's one that like means a bit to you, and you're probably not in love with the current design. So like yeah, if you live in a place that doesn't have a great flag, city, state, whatever, I guess start local, as they say. But okay, yeah. So you're zooming in on your Nebraska. Which one's
good old Nebraska there?
Nebraska's the yeah, Nebraska and Kansas. I always get confused. Please don't take offense to that.
Yeah,
I see the.
Are you able to see the mouse? Okay, nice.
Yes.
So this is actually not the first Nebraska, as some people might know from some of the competitions that Flag Session did. I did have a different Nebraska redesign, so I keep updating and changing a lot of these designs too as I learn more, or I want to change color palettes and stuff. A little bit of the Lincoln flag influenced this color palette also. So as cities are updating, it kind of changes how I want to take a state also. But if you
do you want to like
notice,
for the listeners, like do like a brief synopsis of this one?
For Lincoln, or excuse me, I'm gonna keep getting that wrong here. Nebraska. So we do have this big, beautiful, it's called Chimney Rock. It's kind of out in this area of our state. And that's what's the outline on the bottom. I chose to go with a tricolor-esque format, but I broke the bottom line with the silhouette of Chimney Rock and a sun kind of setting. And I thought that was
Right. I
more
like how the sun
appropriate.
overlaps. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no. Other than I used to have an Art Deco style bowl, but the color palette was very different from our current flag and some of the direction our cities are going. And I kind of picked up, if you look up north here.
Yeah, go ahead. And I'm not going to make you
Dakota.
describe all 50 of these either. For listeners, you can, they will be in the show notes, rest assured. But yeah, we'll just describe a few of them. But
as I back out here a little bit, you start to notice regionally themes develop. So
yeah,
you've got circles, right? Your Colorado, your Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska. Color palettes start telling a story. So you got your blues, golds, whites going on. So you can kind of regionally start to nail down, okay, I'm a proud Midwesterner, or, whatever part you're in the United States.
Okay.
And I will preface, if there's an established symbol that works really well, I kind of lean into that. If people have adopted something, I took that as inspiration. It's very difficult coming up with 50 unique designs. So there are some beautiful artists that have really great designs that I take as inspiration.
Yeah.
And eventually I will post this to my Instagram. And if there is anybody that specifically needs called out that I took direct inspiration from, that is all. Credit needs to be given where credit is due on some stuff too. So
sure, yeah.
You'll see certain flags didn't really change much for potentially what they are or are going to be.
Right. I think that was going to be my first question before even having looked at these, is like, well, what do you do with ones that people tend to have little to no notes on? Like, you know, Colorado, the note people usually have is make the sea touch the borders. Utah's brand new. New Mexico
actually
is.
I did lean into
the Colorado one.
Yeah, so I just haven't got it updated on this map, so I have some editing to do.
Sure, yeah.
Before it, like, fully goes out. But I did.
Yeah.
I think the Flags for Good, Colorado better redesign.
Right.
I did lean into that one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not represented here, but
we can imagine.
Like Texas,
we know
really,
what
really difficult.
the slight differences.
Yeah. But things like
Texas,
I mean, so was very, very difficult. I had a different design to start with that kind of just kept it as it is, and I treated it a lot like Colorado. I just slapped my little diagonals in there to make it United States cohesive. But ultimately, I just wasn't in love with it, and I kept playing around. So this still treats it with the lone star is very prominent. You still have that color pattern. And as I got later in my designs, as you can see, if they had 3 colors, I started leaning into this diagonal tricolor type layout. Like Iowa's the 3 vertical colors.
Right.
So then your design
tend
language
to have the like white, or I guess like kind of buff almost in Oklahoma's case, like in the middle.
Yep.
And
so
then...
Tulsa flag in inspiration, as you can see here.
Yeah.
And Tulsa's gorgeous.
So all right. So I have questions already. So when you show, like, especially people that are very proud of their state flags, like any Texan, across the political spectrum, basically. What do they tend to think? Well, let's drill down on Texas specifically. What do they tend to think of this?
So I know like this is a personal challenge for myself. So I know probably 0% of these are ever going to be adopted or flown in any capacity in a state.
Oh, right.
So this is like my interpretation of what it is. And I don't know, honestly. I don't know if I've ever asked a Texan how they feel about the flag.
Yeah.
So I guess it's interesting because there are definitely designs in here that I love and I would maybe suggest for a state if they ever wanted to change. But I know, like, for me,
Yeah.
I'm okay if it never
No,
goes
for sure.
anywhere, and feedback is always welcome.
Wisconsin stands out to me.
Wisconsin. Oh yeah, you know why that stands out to you? Maybe you talking?
No, sure. Yeah. It's
This,
like it's a fun experiment with yeah.
Flags. I think that one was another inspired by Flags for Good, the Wisconsin redesign. I need to check my notes again, but I'm pretty sure that's available, or a version similar to that is on your sponsors page.
Yeah. Forward or something, I think it's called.
Yep. Here, this was Illinois is another interesting one. I took the Centennial flag that has a blue bar running horizontally, and I kind of remixed it, and then I added a little red so it echoes the Chicago flag also, because I think it is important for a city and a state to somewhat echo each other. Arkansas. I was super happy about Arkansas. That's one of my favorites.
What's with is that gamma? What is that shape? Is it like supposed to kind of be reminiscent of the rhombus?
Yeah. So to me, this was one of the first ones that I designed, and I actually took it as the X from the Confederacy, but I broke it. And there's also an arrow shape in here. So it's like moving past the Confederacy, but also acknowledging like there is some, like, especially in the South, we have a lot of these, is it saltire? Is that the correct term for the X flags?
Yeah. Like Alabama,
the different cross flags. So I think maybe some Arkansas viewers might not appreciate what I did by breaking the X, but
I think some of them might.
Maybe, yeah, definitely. But this star pattern is already a symbol that they use a lot. Yeah, I don't know. When I go into designing, I think about like the overall meanings and how to cram as much meaning in as possible. And that was just something that I thought was important.
Right. As much meaning into like as few, like, yes. You don't want to overcrowd it, which none of yours have.
Definitely.
Right.
My designs are very, very busy. And I acknowledge that for flags, like not all of them are going to be super successful.
Some of them, not. Yeah.
It depends. Like it's a mixed bag for sure. But again, like this project was more to just get my brain working in a certain direction versus being actually practical and like, I'm going to like write all the cities or excuse me, all the states.
Right. And yeah, like I can tell like I can tell it's very much like a work in progress because like if you go up there, the one that you did for Minnesota uses the new design. So like I can tell you're like honing in and like refining like kind of each state as you go, it seems like.
Definitely. Even today before we got on the call, I was even making changes. So like to me, I know this is more of a tool for me to play with color and design. And it'll be a project that I will continue to do as long as I'm still in love with flags. So
yeah,
I think that'll be a while. But yeah, they just keep shifting and morphing as new ideas come, for sure.
Yeah. I think if I were to pick, well, okay, actually, yeah.
Whoop.
Favorite that I've seen so far, I do really like your Wisconsin one. Though, like you said, kind of iterates on that forward one from Flags for Good. But also, what have you done there with Pennsylvania?
Hey, so I think we've got a previous guest on the show that I took some inspiration from on color palette and the Keystone State. So it is difficult to try to make something that has a lot of support and love and try to make it in quote unquote your style. So I hope I did it justice in this case. Another difficult one is the neighbor over here. Everybody feels very strongly about that flag. So to make it in my style, very difficult, but a fun experiment learning process regardless. So
Yeah, I mean, like most of Pennsylvania's neighbors, really, like including Maryland.
yes, ooh, and I do love that. I do love the Maryland flag. That's one of my favorites. I think it's behind me somewhere.
I'm constantly afraid it's like right behind me, just waiting to attack.
Yep. People have very strong feelings about that one for sure.
It's true. Yeah, it's one of those that's very polarizing for lack of anything else. But I see. Okay. I just saw what you did with Maine, the Dirigo kind of anchor around it.
Oh, up top.
Oh, sorry for the listeners and viewers. Luke and I are on a slight delay here, but I just saw what you did for Virginia, the upside down crown on that one.
Yeah, that was an original of mine that I was pretty proud of. The overthrowing of kings, the upside down crown, and I hid a little V in there. So text without text. Looking at you, Colorado. Well, no, Colorado's is just a C. I take that back. It's just a C. But yes, hiding little nuggets in different flags. That's the fun part.
Yeah. And then, okay, so you were going to go, before I rudely interrupted you, you were going to go down to, I think, the territories.
Yeah.
At least that's where you were scrolling, it looked like.
letting them soak in whether we talk about them or not.
Okay, so I can tell what at least 3 of them are. Second one down is American Samoa. Third one is Guam. Fifth one is Puerto Rico.
Yep. Then
Northern
Yep. This is the Northern Mariana.
That one is okay. Right, that makes sense.
Oh, I gotta think about my territories. Who are we missing? Pause for 1 second.
The other one.
I think it's Virgin Islands. Is that correct?
U.S. Virgin Islands. Yeah. That's why there's a V and an I in it.
Yes. And I do think that their current flag is not good. So,
no.
That one is interesting. Ooh. Just because of those Puerto Rico, Cuba type chevrons, I thought would be appropriate. And this is another example of how things keep shifting. Puerto Rico has changed from a chevron. So we'll just keep coming back, changing constantly, but hopefully learning new techniques and honing craft the whole way through.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, these are definitely very interesting. I've never seen, we've had a few like designers on, I guess quite a few at this point. And I guess like Max from Sweden springs to mind. Like he's doing the North Dakota counties. I think that was a Patreon bit, but like, I think if you go on his social media, he's doing the counties, and they're somewhat similar, but you've got like your own kind of like brand on these. I mean, I know you wouldn't consider it your brand. Yeah. It's more of like as you said, like a United States kind of like to make them connected type of thing. which I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever seen exactly to the degree that you're doing it.
I've seen some really interesting examples where they take the Texas flag as inspiration and they redesign all the states in the style of Texas. I've seen a
Right.
really good California style of the same thing. So instead of a bear, Nebraska has a sandhill crane. And then like the different states are represented that way. So I love those kind of artists, vexillographers, taking an idea and how would I imagine every single state in this? And this is kind of my interpretation of a similar idea.
Well, right. And I think yours is not even arguably, like it's more impressive because like those are iterations off of an existing design or like an existing kind of like frame for a design. Like California's is very obviously it's going to be like part of the state's name or the state nickname or whatever, and then a signature animal and whatever. Texas pretty similar, but like you've kind of come up with your own separate thing that's not being done and come up with an iteration for every state and territory off that, which like I'm not gonna lie, there's some that I like a lot more than others. Some that I'm like, well, actually, I mean, you know, Tennessee, like my home state of Tennessee, like I'm probably never gonna accept any design other than the current one. You know, we can
Right.
probably just leave that at that. But
That's another
like,
that's another hard one because I love the current Tennessee flag as well.
yeah. But I mean,
No
I
notes.
appreciate like you taking like the steps and everything and like seeing like, okay, but what if they were, you know,
Yeah.
like a quote unquote United States in this kind of design? And yeah, you've got some really interesting listeners, like I said, check the show notes because it's more than I can describe on here. But suffice to say, like they do all have this like not too sharp of an angle diagonal toward the fly that's usually like a fimbriation or something, and then some of them have it also on the hoist to make like kind of a like Ohio there. I know that doesn't help a listener, but you know sometimes it comes up toward the middle from both the hoist and fly.
Yeah.
Just check them out. All right, very cool.
This one I love. There's so many barren moons redesigned for this state, and I love that. Like, I was proud of that one when I got that one done for Missouri.
Yeah, I barely saw the moon.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, you got to work in a pun for sure.
Yeah, but I can do better than that. Anyway. Okay, well, awesome. Yeah. Did you want to go over any more of these? Or I know you've got like I've previewed a couple more of your slides. Did you want to kind of go ahead and get into those?
Yeah. I will say I'm going to have to switch sharing windows. So bear with me one moment.
It's all good. Actually, while you're doing that, let's go ahead and just cut to break, and both of us will be right back with city flags that iterate off their big siblings. It's gonna be fun. Stick around. All right, cool.
Yay! I'm gonna check and see.
Yeah, I'm not used to that delay. It's a little
too much internet in the other room, so I'm gonna go double check and maybe try to unplug some things just to make sure we're not pulling on my end internet. So
no worries. I will stop recording, but not leave. All right, and we are back for part 3. As mentioned, we are going to get into some city flags that kind of play off of their, their state flags, I think, in most cases here. So, yeah, Luke, go ahead and start us out. We've got the city of Azle, which I gather is in Texas.
Yeah. I think there was some sort of competition at some point that picked the bottom 20 flags or whatever it was that ranked in the latest NAVA survey. And this was one of them that popped up.
Is that bottom thing a flag?
That is their current flag. It's basically their logo.
No, I thought you just, I mean, I guess it's the same effect, but I thought you literally just put their logo on here so that I would know where it was.
Well, that's what they decided to do for their flag, I guess.
All right.
So this is how the city wanted to brand themselves, and I think that's appropriate for a website and things. But when it comes to a flag, if I was in a state like Texas that has such a recognizable layout, when I was redesigning this, I kind of leaned into this circle and this color palette that they picked, and I just did it in a Texas style. So whether I saw the Texas flag at all, if I just saw their city flag, I want it to be so iconic, stylized, like, oh, I know we're probably in Texas here. So I think a lot of cities that can do that effectively are doing themselves a favor with getting the public on board with like embracing that flag as a symbol. So
yeah, for sure. It's definitely very obviously in Texas. Only thing I was going to ask, is there a reason that you put the blue on top and the white on bottom instead of the other way around, or just kind of like a stylistic choice? Or
I honestly can't remember. It's been several months since I did this. There could be a reason to it, but I honestly can't tell you.
No, I mean, it's interesting because like it gives it like a little bit of a different kind of like visual weight or whatever they say, to the point that I might like it better. I don't know if I would like the Texas one better with red on top though. But
Correct. I think I agree. I think I agree with you there.
Yeah.
My main focus was kind of that Star of Texas, but giving it that beautiful arc motion. And then the rest of the flag just kind of tells a color story based on what their town kind of already adopted. So my focus was more on, you could brand that star fairly easily within city limits. If you had a plaque or something that you wanted to give somebody, that star with the arc could be multi-use within the city for sure.
Yeah, nobody else has that design, like, full stop, that I've ever seen. That's very cool. Good iterating on that, like Azle, the logo basically part of it.
Yeah, without literally slapping the town logo in words on there, you can brand yourself a little bit. And I know some people have a problem with logo-y type flags. The more niche you get from like country to state or province down to the city level, I think you do kind of have to start leaning more into a symbol. Because if I'm halfway across the world, I really am not going to know your city probably, let alone halfway across the country.
So okay, what are we looking at here? Just describe this for listeners.
So I think you had a guest on, the Fog and Gold designer.
Yes.
I think
I was just going to say, I think Brian would be pretty stoked to see this. And I'll try again a third time later.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got two good puns in here.
I got two puns in.
But I did reach out to them before I posted this, just because they did a lot of the heavy lifting on this design. I just reached out to them and said, this is kind of how I would interpret it to make it match the state a little bit more. You've got a central animal with kind of a color underneath them, and that fog at the bottom, like low heavy fog, and all that gold. I think that's how I would interpret this if it was going to be a challenge for me to redesign San Francisco, because the layout is very, very similar.
Mhm.
So it calls back to the Big Brother as you're describing. So I do think there's an iteration in here
Yeah.
where I would leave the star for the state and maybe come up with some sort of other emblem, but just place it in the same spot so you still have that harmony between city and state, but maybe reserve the 5-pointed star for the state. But yeah,
I do like a good like element up in that part of pretty much any flag. I also like in this case, like you've looks like you've done the eye of the phoenix in
Yeah.
the same kind of like gray that you use for the fog, or that
Yeah.
you know Brian and yourself, I guess, use for the fog at the bottom too. So that's I don't think his does that. Is that that's a Luke original?
I think his gray might be on top. I can
Well,
read it
he's
here.
got several versions of it. The current one and the one that I own, which he was nice enough to give me at Nava 57, is gold on top and fog on bottom. Although the
Okay.
or you know gray on bottom, although it does go up further, like you said. But I don't remember the eye being in gray.
So I wonder sometimes as I design, if eyeballs can be tricky because with my bull design that I did for Nebraska previously, the eyes are very, very difficult to try to not make them look buggy. So this might have just been the better color choice out of this color palette. Was probably why I went with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right
Colors,
yeah.
they're difficult.
But yeah, I mean, like, so this proves the like this version of it with the wheel, the like nautical, the old timey ship wheel. I don't know if that
Yeah.
steering wheel, the term. But it proves like that you can. I know you don't have one of it next to the California one, but like as you mentioned, like it doesn't necessarily have to have the star up there. You can leave that for the state, but it has an element up there and has that stripe at the bottom, so that it's clear enough what it's playing off of, but it's not like it's not a carbon copy. You know, it's also far enough away in a sense.
If somebody asked you which state is this city probably in, I think there would be a higher percentage of people that would be like, that's probably California. And that's ultimately the goal, is relatability.
That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah.
Yep. I think I previewed that. Ohio.
You did,
this was the Miami is the town city name for that one. This was another one of the lowest rated Nava flags that I entered. So there is a little M hidden in this. If this was hung vertically, there's a M right in here in the stripes.
Oh yeah.
Again, using their color palette. But if anybody knows the bigger brother flag, they're probably going to guess what state that city is in. So I don't see. Oh.
Yeah. Wait, so go back to the Miami one. I'm just curious why you didn't use any kind of blue on that like yellow that's on the white. Maybe a fimbriation or anything.
I tell
Did
you
what, think about that,
or
are you thinking about that now?
Color on this one over and over. The color was so difficult for my pickiness there are several iterations of this one, and I think even as I was trying to pick which one to put beside it, I was like, I think I'm going to go with that one because there's so many angles you can go with it.
As mentioned up top, you've done so many competitions. Like you've done a lot more competitions than I have, but even from my limited experience in that sphere, it's like, I come up with I think one of the flag session ones, I think it was for Montserrat. I sent them one, and then I was like, no, wait, actually this one, and then no, actually maybe this one, and I think I got like 5 in before the deadline, and I was like, Dave, thank you, you're a saint. Like Tracy, you got sorry to send 5 of them, but I could not decide, and then it turned out they were all terrible, all of mine.
Yeah.
So
No, I 100%, I call it letting it bake.
yes,
So the design will constantly change. That's why I know this 50 states thing that I've been doing, that's going to be baking forever and ever. It's just going to keep baking and changing and moving.
yeah,
But I think that's helpful as somebody who's trying to design. You're going to learn more information about a place or what strikes people about their place. So they should
right.
let them bake. Don't get locked in too soon.
Yeah,
that's what
totally.
good design is. And
No
then I
argument
did
there.
peek the next slide. This is Sioux Falls
I know what this
in
is.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So I wanted to put this picture first to kind of show how it's not just one big waterfall. It's a bunch of little bumpity bump waterfalls that zig and zag around things. And that's what inspired the Sioux Falls flag. And then
Yeah.
with my redesign on the one side at the bottom, kind of reuses that sun element, just like the current state flag at the top shows, but showing harmony again at all levels.
Right, right. And if somebody like, yeah, that one would be pretty unmistakably South Dakota.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, especially if you know the current one. I was gonna say the old one, but the current one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why I like the Sioux Falls one as well, is that it's a pretty unique sun star motif thing up there.
Yeah.
Even aside from how unique, like you said. Yeah, because I think I remember looking up Sioux Falls, like the city, because I have no concept or no I know the flag, and that's basically it. I was like, I wonder what the falls actually look like. And so I think that same exact picture. And I was like, oh, it literally is steps down. It's not Sioux Fall, it's Sioux Falls. Like,
Oh yeah.
there's
And
a few,
it's
yeah.
a beautiful park. Absolutely stunning. I've been lucky enough to be walking around those grounds. So I encourage anybody, if you're doing your Midwest tour, check it out.
Right on, yeah.
And we saved the best for
Oh,
last
who's
year.
this?
I can't remember what state this is. But as you probably know, this is a former flag of Chattanooga, I believe. There's a monstrosity that might be there now. But
yeah.
I've always really enjoyed Tennessee for that edge, that very unique Tennessee edge that you have. And I've seen some really good redesigns from other people that interpret that in a different way. They might use a green background or other color scheme, but definitely leaning into that Tennessee edge, I guess.
Yeah. No, I obviously am biased, but I've always loved it. And I mean, I've talked about it before on the show, but like the reason it's there is so that when the flag is like hanging limp, there's like, okay, there's some blue on the bottom. You can tell it's not just an all red flag if the central element gets lost in the way it's like hanging. And like I think I even like said that like to Ted K one time, and he's like, yeah, I love the Tennessee flag except for like the blue on the fly. It seems like it should be either not there or on the Hoyt. I forget exactly what he said. I don't want to misquote him, but he had an issue with the blue on the fly. And I'm thinking like, even if the blue on the fly gets totally destroyed, because that is the part of the flag that gets, destroyed by the wind first, you can still tell what it like. I don't know. You can still very clearly tell what it is. Like there's a barbecue place up here, like up the road, that I need to buy them a new Tennessee flag, because the blue stripe is like just gone, but you can tell what flag it is. It's unmistakable.
And there's another thing, if you have a great city flag, and it gets a little torn on the edge, that's just a good excuse to go buy another flag, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's getting tattered, we gotta get a new one. Let's go.
Exactly. And like, and sorry, like not to, well, just because this is like a local, like home topic to me, but like, it's interesting what you were saying earlier about like Texas and like how Texas should, I think, ideally lean more into like the one that you made for Azle, however you pronounce it.
Mhm.
Like, they should lean more into that design and like iterate off it more. Tennessee, weirdly, like, I mean, not, it's not weird because we have a good flag, but it is weird to me that we have so many county flags that are the Tennessee flag with, instead of the tri-star, it's like the county seal in the middle, but it's other than that identical. Or the colors are reversed where it's red on the fly and blue in the main like field. But it's still, but like, it's weird to me that Tennessee iterates off of it more than, unless there's something I don't know, more than Texas does.
Yeah, because Texas's flag has been around for long enough that you should start to see a little bit more inspiration being pulled from it, I would think. But
You would think. And yeah, I mean, maybe there's something. Again, I live in Tennessee, not Texas, so I'm going to be, I guess, naturally more exposed to that. But yeah, the old flag at Chattanooga, that one that you just had up there, like, it's a shame about.
yeah.
I guess for viewers and for listeners, I'll put the current one in the show notes and and on the screen. I may censor it because it's so terrible, but
Yeah.
it's a seal on a bed sheet, as you could probably guess from this conversation. But I do have, as Luke and I were talking about a little bit before the show, like, I've talked to the mayor of Chattanooga here briefly, and he's assured me that there's a kind of like citywide redesign in progress, of which a flag will be part of that. So I'm trying to politely, humbly beg or ask to be a part of that, but we'll see. But yeah, man, it's for reasons that you lined out exactly. I don't know what the new one will be, but it can't be worse than the current one, and I hope it kind of iterates like
Hopefully.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right, dude. Do you have any other other ones that you wanted to go over here, or?
I think that was the bulk of it, without getting too long-winded on specifics. So we probably did a little long-winded anyway, but when we get talking flags, it's easy to do.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like we're at the bar, right? Except I'm
Correct.
nursing a water here, but I'm sure you have people that nurse a water at the bar as well. So.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, then, yeah, we can go ahead and start to wind down here. Is there anything like, where can we find you, follow you, check out like any projects that you got going?
Best place to find me would be Instagram. And if you want to throw in show notes, have at it. Otherwise, I try to stay off of everything else. I have Facebook and things, but I'd rather be out planting trees or doing other stuff. So,
right on, man. No. Yeah, I will definitely throw in the show notes. But for those who are just gonna like listen and then head over there, is it LT Schroer on Instagram?
Correct. Yeah, with the underscores, it'd be LT_Schroer, that SCH.
Yeah, and they'll probably have to check their phones and wait for it to scroll by with who the guest is. That's what I usually have to do. Like, all right, the name of the episode, who's the guest? There it is. They can see it spelled there too. Anyway, I'm just talkative today. Yeah, so go find Luke, follow him over there. Luke also, just, I'm not too much behind the scenes because it's pretty out in the open, but like, he's been a very consistent and very good player of fresh flags for I think all the seasons, and you got the first round. I haven't checked round 2, but you definitely got round 1 at least of this season. So yeah, thanks for your engagement, and thanks for playing on that too. And I almost forgot to plug myself. Speaking of fresh flags, you can find us on Instagram, any of the @based platforms, @flagged4, like the number, content. Look us up on YouTube. It's Flagged for Content, all spelled out. There's a link tree. I think it's just linktree.com/flagged for content. That'll at least get you there. It'll correct you. It'll be a little sassy about it, but it'll get you there. And I think that's pretty much all I've got. Other than I always forget to find a way to kind of close us out here. Luke, can you do me a solid? Is there the kind of any way you can maybe wind us down here?
I think I can do that. I think I'm going to end with a quote of somebody, if that works. This is from Gilbert Baker, the designer of the original 8-color pride flag. But he said, "A true flag is not something that you can really design. A true flag is torn from the soul of the people. A flag is something that everyone owns, and that's why they work. The rainbow flag is like other flags in that sense. It belongs to the people." So when I design, that's kind of what's inspired me, and hopefully we've got other designers out there ready to take on all 50 states or whatever other little projects. So
yeah, well said, Luke. Well said, Gilbert. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming on here, and listeners, viewers, VexHeads of all stripes. Thank y'all for watching, listening, and we will catch y'all on the fly side. Take care. All right, man.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Oh, did we get any of that?
Got it. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.